Welcome to Satsang. I've been asked today to talk about how to deal with difficult emotions. And I think what they're asking is, how do you deal with emotions that are really quite severe? And my answer is always the same on how to deal with anything, really. You always begin with acceptance. If you have pain, you accept that you have pain. It's our non-acceptance that really gets things out of hand. Our resistance to what's appearing is always the problem, not what's appearing. Human beings have all sorts of things happen in their life, all sorts of tragedies. They have repressed emotionality, trauma trapped in the body, all sorts of things can be caught in the body that suddenly appear and there's a reaction to it, an emotional reaction. But if we can just start making our first reaction to that acceptance, well, that would probably be a response, acceptance, it changes everything. And so if you are sad, accept that you're sad. If you're fearful, accept that you're fearful. If you're angry, accept that you're angry. Always begin with acceptance. If you're feeling low self-worth, accept that you're feeling that terrible feeling. In acceptance, we can find a level of freedom. In resistance to what is, all we ever find is suffering. And the thing is, at a natural level, we're programmed to resist because it's about survival. We're programmed to fight. We're programmed to run away. We're programmed to do all the things that are required to survive. This is at a very primal level of existence. But as human beings, because of our intelligence, we can learn to accept instead of resist. In acceptance, we find freedom. But it does run against our nature, and so it's difficult to master. The only way to master it is to practice it. And that takes conscious effort. Life is going to basically take everything off you, eventually your life. Human beings really have a lot of tragedy in their lives because a lot of things get taken, a lot of people get sick, a lot of people die, a lot of businesses fail, a lot of things don't go the way you'd like them to. There's a lot of loss, there's a lot of tragedy. And that tragedy can lead to an enormous amount of suffering if we resist it, if we resist the changes that are occurring in our life. And the thing is, changes aren't going to stop. It's not like we can ever really be safe. We can pretend we're safe, but truthfully, everything is very fragile. We are very fragile. Our friends are fragile. Our family is fragile. Even our businesses, our houses, everything is fragile. But we pretend that it's not. We actually try to feel safe. So we project a certain level of we're going to be okay later onto everything. Not real. It's not real at all. It's a projection. We're not safe. And it's actually okay to not be safe. It's actually okay. Reality is actually okay. But because we're constantly trying to make everything safe, we can't truly relax. And the only way we can make everything safe really is in a dream, because in truth, it's not. So we accept that it's not safe. We accept the world as it is. It's a place where we lose things. That's how it is. It's a place where things change. And after you've accepted things for a while, that this is how it is, you become very fatalistic in that, well, it's happened because it was meant to happen. Otherwise it wouldn't have happened, whatever it is. And in that, there's a certain peace. There is no peace in us arguing that it shouldn't have happened, in us saying, oh, that was wrong. It's just what is. The good, the bad, and the ugly. It's just what is. And so what actually works is a warm welcoming of whatever, which is an acceptance, a warm acceptance of whatever. And in this warm welcoming, everything loses its sharp edges. In a warm welcoming, we're not loading ourselves up further. We're starting to mellow ourselves out. But it takes a lot of practice. You're not going to get warm welcoming straight up. You might agree with me, or you might not, but you might agree with me that warm welcomings are a way to handle life. But the only way that you can master that so that actually happens is to practice it. To warmly welcome whatever appears, not only outside of you, but inside of you. And so in dealing with heavy emotions, same, a warm welcoming, make it okay. Just make it okay. Or don't make it okay and create suffering for yourself. See, that's the choice. And that choice is not obvious to us, but that's the choice. As long as we resist life, which is our doing, we suffer. And that suffering doesn't change anything. Whatever's happened. There's nothing that can be done about that. On top of that, we add our suffering because we resist what's happened instead of accepting it, instead of being warmly okay with it. I'm not ever going to suggest this is easy to anyone, but it's a possibility for us as human beings to step into higher consciousness and learn to let go, accept, surrender, and not suffer. It's possible because of our intelligence. But that's going to be totally up to you, because you and only you are responsible for your feelings, for your thoughts, for your actions. Nobody is responsible but you. And so it's up to you. It's actually a wonderful message, but can it be received and acted upon? And if you do decide to practice this, to be warmly okay with what appears, I can guarantee you one thing: you'll probably fail a lot before you get good at it. Because it's really going against old default patterning that you've had for a long time. But if you practice it long enough, you'll get good at it. Like anything else you practice long enough, you get good at. To be warmly okay with whatever appears. This is the way to deal with any form of emotionality. Are there any questions, any statements, or any challenges to this teaching today?
The first question is as follows. Is resisting life always a choice that I have?
Only if you're conscious. If you're unconscious, it is not a choice. And people like to think they're conscious, but most people are pretty unconscious because they're living in their heads. Now, if you can see what your mind's up to, you don't get caught in reaction. You can stop it before the reaction. But that's higher consciousness. And that's the beauty of higher consciousness. We can see what our mind's up to, and we don't get caught in reactivity because there's a touch and then there's a reaction. We see the touch and we don't react. We may respond, but we don't react because we're conscious enough not to. And so this is what higher consciousness affords people, this non-reactivity to life. And that type of mind that doesn't react is equanimous. Only through practice can that occur, because it's not really natural to not react. It's natural for people to stay in lower consciousness, by the way, quite often thinking they're in higher consciousness, but they're not. If you're reacting, you're in lower consciousness. In higher consciousness, there's a response. And so there's a choice in higher consciousness, because you see it. In lower consciousness, you don't see it. It's just a reaction. Bang. Cool. And so the whole endeavor for the seeker is to go to higher consciousness, find a way to get to higher consciousness. And from higher consciousness, there's the potential to superconsciousness. People can go from lower consciousness to superconsciousness for a glimpse, satori, maybe through self-inquiry or something else, but they probably can't stay there. Someone who has higher consciousness, who has a mind that is equanimous, that sees itself, that is not reacting, that mind can support enlightenment. So for the seeker, it's important to raise consciousness levels to a level where they can see the mind and not get caught in reactivity, where they get a choice to react or not to react.
The next question is as follows. Where does the yearning come from to be in control?
The yearning to be in control is simply the survival mechanism. If we're not in control, we die. It's a program designed to keep us alive. After all, the mind and the body are simply survival mechanisms, and they're programmed to control their environment, control their life, control everything in order to survive. So that's very strong in all human beings, to try to survive, to try to make it through. And so you find that everybody that's alive is trying to control their environment. The only people that might not be trying to control their environment are people who are probably awake and they've surrendered. So they're letting it all happen. But up until awakening, when there's an ego-based reality, that really is just a survival mechanism. It's nothing more. And this survival mechanism will try to survive. Even one that's interested in enlightenment will try to survive, will try to control. So at the top end of consciousness, when people are starting to find themselves as beingness, the ego and the mind is still trying to control by measuring everything, by trying to help, by trying to assist. Even those thoughts have to be surrendered. Everything at the top end has to be surrendered. Nothing, nothing, nothing left. Unconditional surrender of control. Unconditional surrender means you've handed control over to the universe. Hello, everybody. I believe my computer crashed just now. I don't know how, but it seems to have. I'm back again. I'm trying to get everything sorted out. Do I still have people helping me participate?
Yes, Vish, we are online.
Oh, are we? That's wonderful.
Yeah. You just dropped out and you're back.
Yeah, my computer crashed and I don't know why. It just closed itself down. But that's life. Closed down computer. So you can see that there's a heap of people there. And I just got to get my questions up now. Okay, so was there a question, or am I in the middle of a question?
No. You were talking about the yearning for control and where it comes from.
I think I was at the end of that, or
Yeah, I've got another question for you that's very relevant.
okay.
How do you handle stress when things don't go as planned for you?
You mean like just now when my computer crashed?
Yeah.
I handle it's probably the wrong word. I just don't react. The computer crashed and I lost connection with everybody, but nothing moved inside. So when you ask me how I handled it, that's actually what happens. Nothing happens. There's no reaction. There was a response in that I then tried to start my computer up again, which I did, and then got online and chatted with you again. But before awakening, I was pretty similar actually. I used to be pretty cool, calm, and collected, because that's what I'd practiced most of my adult life, because I was in business for a long time, and cool, calm, and collected was the way to operate successfully in the world. Panicking and losing it just wouldn't have worked, particularly in the type of businesses I was in. What was really required was to be cool and to make things work, to make it so. No amount of drama was involved, because it wouldn't have worked. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure about your question. How do you handle stress when things don't go as planned for you? Well, that's how I do it. I don't react. I just make things work. I make it so. So if I wasn't able to get the computer back going again, that's okay. It's what happened. I was able to get it going again. So once again, that's okay. That's what happened. Mind stayed level because it does. It doesn't actually react. It stays level, equanimous. I hope that answers that question for you.
Next question is as follows. How do we break the habit of excessive thinking?
Let me guess. How about stopping it? That's what meditation is. It's breaking the habit of living in the excessive thinking. Is just dreaming. That's all it is, because all thinking is dreaming. None of it's real. There's nothing real about thinking. And if you want to stop thinking, get in touch with what's real. Have your awareness on what's real. Ignore the mind. And so mindfulness training is being mindful of what is real. The only thing that's not real is your mind. Meditation is being aware of what's real. The only thing that's not real is your mind. And it's up to you. What are you going to put your awareness on? What are you going to feed? If you just feed the mind, well, you're going to stay in the mind. If you start putting your awareness on what is real, you're denying the mind and you're coming back, or reclaiming, if you like, reality from the dream that you've been lost in. Excessive thinking, it's a funny way of putting it. I think most people are into excessive thinking, actually. Most people are dreaming. They're half in what they're doing and they're half thinking, and it's kind of not a totality of being present to reality. But it's up to you. If you really want to stop excessive thinking, start putting your awareness on what's real. Stop entertaining the dream. Stop entertaining the thoughts. Your choice.
Do you have any advice for people with anxiety or who are going through depression?
Yeah, accept it. I approach everything from that space, just acceptance. Whatever it is, however wonderful it is or however bad it is, it's just accept it as it is. Accept, 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 accept. When we look at anxiety, anxiety is basically fear-driven, and fear is always about the future. Something is going to happen that's not nice, it's unsavory. but it's a projection, it's not real. But the moment we bring acceptance in, we're starting to allay it because we're not supporting it in a way. Acceptance undoes things. Our resistance just fires it up, gives it more strength, gives it more power. Acceptance is the key, but it has to be practiced. And only you can practice that. Nobody can practice it for you. Not possible.
The next question, when someone is single, is it possible to break the longing to be in relationship?
Why not accept the longing to be in relationship and accept the fact that you're single? You see, you're wanting to control it again. You're wanting to resist it in some way. And that's just not what I teach. Why not accept the longing and accept being alone? Why not go for acceptance of what is rather than trying to change it? Or if you do want to change it from a place of acceptance. The moment you put acceptance into the picture, desperation leaves. Acceptance really is the key, and I keep coming back to that because there is no other key that actually works. Life is the way life is. If you're single and you haven't got a partner and you're longing for one, accept it. And accept that you may be lonely as well. Accept whatever appears. Everything. Make it okay. Make it so.
When a loved one dies, is it possible to ever escape the pain and sadness?
Well, it's possible to distract yourself. When someone dies that you really love, that you're really involved with, there's going to be a sense of loss. There's going to be grief. And it's going to hurt. But we can accept that too. Matter of fact, the only way out of the grief cycle is acceptance. But that's going to be up to you as to how you're programmed and what you're going to do with your loss. Everything is going to die. That's a fact. We're all terminal. Can we accept it? Can we accept the pain of loss when we experience it? When something close to us dies or leaves, can we be okay? Or are we going to resist? To the level we resist is to the degree that we suffer. Because it is the resistance that causes the suffering. Pain is just pain. Resistance to it is suffering. So is it possible to escape the pain and sadness when someone dies? I don't think so, actually. It is possible to escape the suffering by moving to acceptance, but the pain will still be there. The sadness might still be there. But if we warmly welcome sadness, there's a nectar in that too. If we warmly welcome pain, there's a nectar in that also. It's only our resistance that really causes the problem. Try acceptance. Try to be warmly okay with whatever happens, whatever appears, and see where that takes you. Just as an experiment for yourself.
How can I get away from being in a form of neediness when in relationship?
Neediness. Wonder what's created the neediness. That would be an interesting investigation. And so that's where we begin. We begin with investigation. What's causing the neediness in us? And how does that neediness show its face? How does it show up? And so we're doing a little bit of examination, self-examination here. Is it that we can't be alone? Is it that we've got abandonment wounding that we don't want to feel? Is it, there's so many things it could be. But it's going to be up to you to investigate and find out what's driving you, what's motivating you to be needy. But it always begins with acceptance. And so you find that you're needy, accept that you're needy, and then have a look and see what's causing this neediness and how it's manifesting itself. And if it's been caused by wounding that hasn't been dealt with, see what you can do about healing that wounding. That's up to you too. Can you heal your wounding? Are you willing to feel what is there to heal it? Or are you simply just trying to escape everything? And one of the symptoms of that is neediness. It really is up to you. This is your investigation of your psyche, your life. Have a look and see.
The following question has been asked by a viewer. If I am in acceptance of loss, does that mean I won't experience sadness or grief?
No, you'll definitely experience sadness and grief. Acceptance doesn't take away the pain. Acceptance takes away the suffering. In accepting life as it is, we're not resisting life as it is. And so there's a different feel to it altogether. But most people don't accept, they resist and they suffer incredibly. But just because you accept loss doesn't in any way mean that you're not going to feel sadness or grief over the loss. You may feel sadness, you may feel grief. But in acceptance of the sadness and grief, that changes that to some degree as well. It's just what is. We only truly, really suffer when we're in resistance to what is. And it is our programming that will put us in resistance to what is. But we can change that. We can find a way to be okay with what is rather than constantly resist what is. To warmly welcome whatever appears, no matter what it is. But it won't take away your pain. It won't take away your grief. It won't take away your sadness. It just means that you won't suffer anywhere near as much because you're not offering resistance. That's all.
The following question is from a viewer. What does it take to be able to accept whatever happens, no matter what?
Really, the ability to surrender unconditionally is the bottom line. You see, unconditional surrender means you're basically okay with whatever happens. As a matter of fact, there's no reaction to whatever happens because you're surrendered unconditionally. And that's what it takes. Ultimately, that's what it takes. But that's also ultimately what it takes for someone to stay awake, to stay enlightened. Unconditional surrender, which when examined is found to be a non-doing, a non-reaction. And so something happens and there's just no reaction. That's surrendered. If we still have to accept, well, acceptance is a doing, but acceptance teaches us how to surrender. And so the practice of acceptance leads us to surrender. But there needs to be a fair bit of practice because it is so against the survival mechanism that we are to be surrendered, because it means we're not going to survive. And the survival mechanism is not good at the idea of not being able to survive. It wants to survive. At a very deep core level, it wants to survive. And so to have mastered the mind, to being an unconditional surrender has taken a lot of failures. Otherwise, it would never have been mastered. And the difference between someone who has mastered their mind and someone who hasn't is just practice. It's just the number of times you've failed and got up again and tried again. And so there's nothing, we look at these people who are very surrendered and we think, ah, how lucky. No, they did a lot of work. They practiced a lot. Otherwise, they wouldn't be surrendered. That's all it takes is practice. Whatever you practice, you'll get good at. If all you do is practice resistance to life, well, that's all you're going to be good at. Your choice. You're creating your reality.
The next question, can my relationship enhance my search for truth?
Fortunate enough to be in a relationship that really doesn't work well, where it's difficult to be with the other person because you're so different. It can really enhance your search for truth because it can teach you, if you're willing, it can teach you acceptance and surrender. Because when you're in a relationship where everything is flowing easily, there's no need to practice acceptance and surrender. So you don't learn what's required for higher consciousness. You don't learn what's required for enlightenment. You don't learn surrender. You don't learn acceptance. And so if you're in a relationship where it's hard, you've got more opportunity to learn surrender and acceptance. And so be grateful.
How to use different and challenging experiences to support you in higher consciousness?
It's interesting you should ask that, because that's the question I just answered in a lot of ways. You just surrender to what is. You accept your partner as they are. Instead of getting righteous, instead of getting arrogant, even when you are right, let go. Let go. Accept the other person as they are. Find a way to make bridges instead of burning them. This is a great teacher. You will find that your best teacher in acceptance and surrender will probably be your partner if you're in a relationship, because they're the ones that can trigger you the best, because they're the ones who are closest to you. They're the ones that you love. And so they can be your best teachers if you're willing to allow them to be your best teachers. But if all you do is get righteous and arrogant, and well, you're going to destroy the relationship anyway, aren't you? Instead of it being a loving, caring relationship where people don't get along so well, it's going to be a non-relationship because you're not going to be together. Even the most different people can make a relationship work if they're willing to accept the other.
What is your biggest regret in life that looking back you would have done differently?
I recall before I got into higher consciousness, being mean to people, and I have regrets over that. It's true. I have regrets over that. I haven't had many regrets after I got into higher consciousness because I really gave it my totality, and I learnt the way of the heart. But before I learnt the way of the heart, I was mean sometimes, I was cruel sometimes, I hurt people sometimes, and I regret that. And this regret came as a result of my heart opening and looking back and going, oh God, I wish I hadn't done that, you know? And in a way, it broke my heart open further to see the things that I had been involved in that I was regretting. The one thing about regretting is you want to make sure that you don't run guilt on yourself. That's where you beat yourself up for it. There's a difference between guilt and regret. Guilt can be a great heart opener because you're sincerely sorry for what you've been involved in. Guilt, on the other hand, is you can be sorry for what you're involved in and you beat yourself up. That just wounds you. That is you being unkind to you. That is you not being your own best friend, and that doesn't actually work. There's nothing wrong with having regrets. They can be very, very good heart openers. But whatever you do, never beat yourself up. Make it okay for you to be you. Make the good, the bad, and the ugly of you okay. Because truthfully, if we were involved in things that were unsavory, where other people got hurt, it was because we were operating from lower consciousness. Otherwise, we would never have done those things. And so when I look at the world and I see people doing horrific things to other human beings, I know they're operating out of lower consciousness. I know they're actually doing the best they can while in lower consciousness, because that's what lower consciousness does. And I know that if they ever get the opportunity to go to higher consciousness, if they're truly honest with themselves, they're going to regret it. I see people doing their best, depending on their consciousness level, depending on their programming. I don't see any mistakes.
Why do I lose touch with beingness when I feel rejection?
Because awareness goes back to the mind. So someone who's got awareness on awareness is in touch with truth. Someone, well, they are living as truth. And then when awareness comes back to the mind, they live as the mind. If the mind contracts and awareness goes back to it, awareness has lost itself in a way. It's turned away from itself. And there'll be a sense of loss in the mind. The funny thing about rejection is it's like, yeah, everyone rejects everyone. It's like, it's not, it's natural, it's normal for people to reject. The idea that we shouldn't be rejected is actually out of touch with the reality of the world we live in. We reject people. We reject things. It's actually okay. It's okay to be rejected. It really is. And yeah, if you contract because you're rejected, awareness may go back to itself, back to the mind, sorry. If it goes back to the mind, you've lost what you found. That's what happens. That's why developing a mind that doesn't react, doesn't contract, is very important, particularly in the early stages of awakening. Otherwise, the chances are awareness will go back to the contracting mind, leave itself and go back to the contracting mind. And people go, well, I've come back to ego-based reality. Well, sure you have. You've been contracting. The whole idea is to stay open. To stay open no matter what. To not react. To respond to life. That's higher consciousness. And only you can create that. That doesn't happen by itself. It takes a fair bit of work, actually. And it's up to you.
The next question is from Satya.
Hello, Satya.
Hi, Vishrant. Vishrant, what is the key of most of time we can most of time we can live in reality ourselves?
Ask the question again, Satya. I didn't understand you.
Vishrant, how we can be in a reality most of time? I mean, how we can conscious ourselves.
You're asking,
yeah.
How can we be in reality? Are you talking about how can we be enlightened most of the time, or how can we actually be with what is real most of the time, which is the world out here?
Yeah, what is real world out there, I mean, here. And so in this world, I mean, how we can, most of the time, how we can conscious, how we can put in a practice to conscious ourselves.
Oh, okay. You mean you're asking how can you be aware out here all the time with the real world?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm like that. I've been like that my whole adult life, Satya, because I chose to. I chose not to live in my head. I chose to be with what is real. I chose to be with my body, which is real. I chose to be out here, which is real. I chose not to be a dreamer because I chose to. I didn't want to live in my head. I wanted to live in reality. I loved it. I love reality. But that was a choice that I made. The only way that you can reclaim reality if you've become a dreamer is to practice mindfulness. In other words, practice being mindful of what's out here. Otherwise, it ain't going to happen because you have a default pattern of living in your head. I have a default pattern and have had a default pattern most of my life of living with awareness out here, not here. But I don't do anything to do that. That's actually a default pattern. It's not that I practice anything, actually. It's a default pattern to be present to reality. Present awareness aware of self and awareness aware of the world. I don't really have an interest in what happens in my head, and my head is silent.
Okay, so Vishrant, from the side of seeker, it is all about seeker's willingness.
Well, if you don't practice being present to reality, it's not going to happen. If you've got a default habit of living in your head, that's what's going to happen until you die.
Okay.
It's not going to change, not unless you do something about it.
Okay, Vishrant. Thank you.
Yeah, you're looking for an easy answer, Satya, and there isn't one. You have to do the work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Satya.
Alan would like to ask a question.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, Vishrant, how are you today?
Pretty much the same as yesterday, Alan.
Absolutely. I'd expect no less. So I understand when we talk about the survival mechanism and the body wants to keep itself alive, and that can be one of the reasons that keeps us locked in lower consciousness. There's times I notice specifically with my partner the need to mentally be right. So I will have an idea in my head and we might have a discussion or an argument, and I feel the need to hold on to wanting to be right. So it doesn't seem to be linked to a survival mechanism. I'm just wondering what that need to be right actually is and the best way to deal with that.
It actually is linked to the survival mechanism, Alan, otherwise you wouldn't bother.
Okay.
But the thing about it is when you're having an argument with someone, it's always good to accept that they may have a different opinion than you. The moment we don't accept them, that's when war begins. So what I'm saying is when we're having an argument or a disagreement with someone, can we be on our side, but can we be on their side as well? And in acceptance of them as they are, right or wrong, we're actually on their side as well at the same time as we're having that disagreement.
Yeah.
The moment we actually only take our own side, if we're in an argument, we've actually gone to war.
Yeah.
Because we're not holding the other any longer. And that can destroy a relationship. But if we're willing to accept the other has a different opinion, accept that they may be wrong even if we think they're wrong, and hold them and be on their side at the same time as being on our own side, well, then we're likely to build bridges rather than burn them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple of times that's come up in the last while, mostly with my partner. And it's sort of ordinary as it seems, I have a funny feeling that it's going to be a big key to making life a lot easier. Yeah.
Well, if your partner gets righteous and angry and whatever else in the discussion or argument, and you do the same, well, it's just a destructive path you're on. But if you can stay mature enough to hold your partner and still be on their side while on your own side, there's a chance that it's going to work. And so it only needs one partner in a relationship to be mature to make it work.
Yep. Yep. So it's just really that lack of maturity and lack of wisdom that would cause me to want to express my point and be right.
Well, it's not this lack of understanding in a way. You see, we've got to look at, well, what makes the relationship work and what doesn't make it work. And what doesn't make it work is poor communication. The other thing, of course, is lack of commitment. But in poor communication, if we're not supporting the other while we're having a difference of opinion with them, our communication is actually probably war.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I see that.
And
Yeah.
so it's difficult, but because we're basically programmed for war, unfortunately. It's a part of our survival mechanism. But we can actually learn to take care of the other while we're actually expressing our opinion that might be opposite to them. We can be on their side as well as our own at the same time.
Yeah. That's very insightful and helpful. Very much appreciated. Yeah, very much appreciated. That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, take care.
The following question has been asked by a viewer. A lovely piece of advice was given to me years ago by a close friend. He said, try to accept that everyone is doing the best they can with what they've got. It resonates with me, but it can be quite difficult.
That is a statement, not a question.
Do you want to comment on that statement?
I already have. I actually made a similar statement about 15 minutes ago.
There is another statement from a viewer who writes, I think Ned Kelly was on the way to enlightenment, as he is supposed to have believed such is life.
Oh, really? I don't know. It's interesting you should bring up the name Ned Kelly. He was a relative of mine. But I don't know if he was on the way to enlightenment, but his attitude was such is life was a pretty good attitude to have, such is life. It was the statement he made before he was hung. Such is life. I actually have the same attitude, such is life. Life is just as it is, neither good, neither bad. It's just what is, such is life. I agree with Ned. I don't know if he was on his way to enlightenment. I don't think he was into spirituality. He was probably, being Irish, he's probably a Catholic. You got anything else?
Should I practice self-inquiry when I feel negative emotions?
No. No, then you'll be using self-inquiry as an escape methodology to avoid those negative emotions. You're better off allowing yourself to feel those emotions and be okay with them rather than use some kind of escape methodology, whether it's self-inquiry or meditation or anything else. Being okay with what appears allows us to heal our wounding. If we use escape methodologies to avoid our wounding, well, the wounding stays intact and we never heal it. And so I don't advise people to use self-inquiry to avoid or feel negative emotions ever. Allow yourself to feel the emotions. Allow yourself to be with them. Be okay with that.
What helped you to put truth above everything, including relationships and comfort?
I got to say it's a disciplined mind, but it's also a love affair. my mind fell in love with truth. It experienced the Buddha field around 𝐬𝐞𝐥𝐟-𝐢𝐧𝐪 through the 80s, and my mind fell in love with truth. It fell in love with the Buddha field. It fell in love with the beauty. And that love affair never faded. Everything was given up in that love affair. Everything was surrendered in that love affair of truth. There was such a totality in the love affair. From the mind's perspective, beingness or truth or pure awareness or consciousness, whatever you want to call it, God, if you want to call it that, my mind was totally devoted to it. It recognized the truth of it. It recognized the beauty of it. It recognized that it was worthy of love. It was worthy of devotion. It was worthy to be the beloved. And so everything was put in second place, whether that was business, money, relationships. Everything was put in second place, and truth was put in first place. And so the mind worshipped the beloved, and eventually in that love affair surrendered to the beloved, gave its life to the beloved, gave its life to truth in unconditional surrender, but in a love affair with that. And I actually don't know if there's another way, but the mind, when it's experiencing love, will lay down its life for something else, for something higher, or someone else. And so love is the true jewel of consciousness, because in a lot of ways, well, for me, it facilitated awakening. That love of truth, that love of beingness, that absolute surrender to that in love. And I really don't think there's another way, but I'm not absolutely positive of that. I just know what happened here. And that love affair has never ceased and has never dwindled. It's always here. And so you ask, what helped me put truth first? I fell in love with truth. It was my beloved. And it's so funny because I talk like, it's so funny to have to talk in English to people, because it's all in silence, it's all in stillness, it's all in emptiness, it's all in vastness. There is no one. There's actually an absence, and it's difficult to talk about. In the love affair, Vishrant died, and then there was nothing. There's just a space where Vishrant used to be. So people talk to me and they think there's somebody here, but there's no sense of somebody here. Enlightenment doesn't include you. You don't become enlightened. Awareness becomes aware of itself, and the I basically atrophies to nothing because it's not believed to be real any longer. It's just used for communication, like the body's used to be here. It's kind of over. There's no sense of a somebody doing anything any longer. The chair is empty. And so talking about it is difficult because I'm talking to ego-based people who project everything from that ego-based reality. And to say that enlightenment doesn't include you, even though you're the one that's thirsty for it, is a truth, but it's hard for you to accept. The I never wakes up. Can't. It's a dream. Doesn't wake up. It was never real in the first place. That's aware of the I, that's aware of the mind, becomes aware of itself. And if it stays aware of itself, that's enlightenment. Nothing to do with the mind, in fact. Pure awareness, pure consciousness, aware of itself, creates a Buddha field. That's the Buddha. That's enlightenment. And a mind that will support that stays quiet. It's up to you to facilitate that if you're interested in knowing yourself as truth. It's up to you. And I'm talking to the I. It's up to you as an I to facilitate that. But it's so beautiful. Beingness is so beautiful from the mind's perspective. It's so beautiful. You are that. You cannot be anything other than that. All that has to happen is for awareness to turn on itself and you to know yourself as truth. Thank you for Satsang. Good to see you brave hearts here today.